They say small towns don't keep secrets. That's a lie. They keep them better than anywhere else. They hide them under polite smiles and church picnics, in the cracks of old wood porches, and under the weight of quiet guilt. My name's Tom Callahan, and I've lived in Ridge Hollow, Wyoming, all my life. 42 years old. Mechanic by trade, husband by habit. My wife, Sarah, and I built our life one paycheck and one compromise at a time. We weren't perfect, no one here is, but we had rhythm. Until the rhythm stopped. It began with silence. The kind that doesn't belong in a marriage, not peaceful, but measured. Conversations turned into polite exchanges. Her phone became an extra limb. She started wearing perfume again, the same one she used when we first met. I wanted to believe it was nostalgia. Deep down, I knew it was in single quotes. One night, she said she was going to visit her sister in Casper. It was late, raining hard. Something inside me refused to believe her. So, I waited 20 minutes and followed. She didn't head east toward Casper. She went west toward the canyons. The road out there's quiet, a strip of black that swallows headlights. I trailed her until she turned off into an old logging road that led to the Red Elk Motel, a place where drifters and truckers slept off hangovers. Her car stopped in front of room 9. She didn't hesitate, just parked, checked her reflection in the rearview, and went inside. I stayed in my truck, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The rain hit hard, making the world look warped through the windshield. 10 minutes later, the door opened. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a sheriff's jacket. He looked around once, then closed the door again. Sheriff Mason Holt. I'd known Mason since high school. He used to date my sister before he put her in a hospital bed one night and walked away without a charge. The town called it an accident. I called it power. And now, he was sleeping with my wife. I sat there until the rain stopped. My heart didn't. It just changed rhythm, slower, colder, controlled. That night, I didn't confront her, didn't break down the door. I just drove home, every mile etching something darker into me. When she came home at dawn, her hair was damp, her eyes tired, her lips trembling with a lie. The storm was bad, she said. I stayed at Jenna's. I kissed her on the forehead and said, I'm glad you're safe, but I was already planning. The next morning, I went to the shop early. I opened the drawer under the register where I kept an old notebook, my fix list. Usually, it was for car parts and client debts. That morning, I wrote something new at the top of the page: how to destroy a man who hides behind a badge. That day, I learned something important: revenge isn't an act. It's a process. It needs patience, precision, and the kind of calm that terrifies you because it feels good. Over the next week, I collected pieces. The small things Mason thought no one noticed. He used county gas cards for his personal truck. Met a developer at the diner every Thursday, a man named Clyde Barrett, who'd been buying up ranch land on the cheap. And once, I saw Sarah's car parked outside the sheriff's office long after closing. She wasn't on any payroll. I took pictures, dates, times. I wasn't sure what I was building, but I knew it was a weapon. Then, 3 nights later, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name in block letters. Inside was a single photo of Sarah and Mason, tangled in motel sheets, her hand on his badge. No note. No threats. Just proof. Someone wanted me to know, and I had a feeling it wasn't out of kindness. The morning after I got that photo, I drove to the ridge overlooking the valley. I sat there for an hour, watching the sun bleed over the hills, and tried to convince myself I could just burn it. The letter, the picture, the thoughts crawling through my skull. But that image of Sarah with Mason, it wasn't just betrayal. It was proof of power. Proof that the man who was supposed to protect this town thought he could take whatever or whoever he wanted. And maybe he could. He'd done it before, back in 2008. Mason Holt was just a deputy, working night shifts and living off whiskey and ego. Then, a rancher named Ed Barker went missing. People said he took off after some gambling debt. But I knew Ed. He had a daughter, Lucy, 15 at the time, the quiet, kind of girl who'd always wave at me when she came into the shop with her dad. A week after Ed disappeared, Lucy stopped showing up to school. Mason handled the investigation himself. He wrote the report, closed the case, and told everyone it was unfortunate but not suspicious. Lucy's mother left town a month later. Their house was bulldozed for county development. And Mason, he got promoted. That's how things worked here. When I opened the garage that morning, there was an envelope on the workbench. My name again. Inside, to photos. Mason and Clyde Barrett, the developer, standing beside an unmarked truck, cash changing hands. A third man in the background, wearing a construction vest, face half-turned. At first, I thought it was just more corruption. But then I recognized the third man's tattoo of the snake curling up his forearm. That tattoo used to belong to my brother-in-law, Kenny, who'd gone missing 10 years ago. They said he OD'd. I never saw a body. And now, here he was, and a photo with the sheriff and the man buying half the county. That's when I knew this wasn't just about Sarah anymore. This was about every person who ever disappeared, every family that never got an answer. The whole damn town was built on silence, and Mason was the wolf guarding it. That night, I went to see Lucy Barker, the rancher's daughter. She lived out by the canyon now, in a trailer that leaned like it was tired of standing. When she opened the door, I almost didn't recognize her. Life had stripped her down to bone and cigarette smoke. "Tom Callahan," she said. "Took you long enough." She'd been expecting me. She poured whiskey into chip mugs and told me the rest. "Ed didn't run," she said. "He found out the county was paying for land that didn't exist. Fake parcels. Ghost titles. Mason was in on it with Clyde. My dad tried to blow the whistle. 2 days later, he was gone. They buried him up by the ridge mine, said it was closed off for safety. I sat there, gripping the mug so hard it cracked. "You got proof?" I asked out. Lucy smiled a slow, bitter twist of her mouth. "Proof? No, but I got a map." She handed me a folded paper, yellowed and torn. Old survey lines. My dad marked where the trucks went at night. County equipment. Shouldn't have been there. I unfolded it. One mark stood out in Red Elk Motel. Room 9. The same room from the photo of Sarah and Mason. That night, I couldn't sleep. I drove out to the motel again, parked in the same spot I had weeks before. Only this time, I wasn't here to watch. I waited until the front desk light went out, then slipped behind the building. The rain started again, thin and quiet. Room 9's curtains were drawn, but the window latch was old. I pried it open with a flathead screwdriver. Inside, the air smelled like mold and secrets. The room was empty except for a duffel bag under the bed. I pulled it out. Inside were stacks of cash, county files, and one small silver badge cracked clean down the middle. Deputies. Badge number 214. I didn't need to check the registry to know whose it was. Kenny's. My missing brother-in-law had been a deputy, and the man who took his badge and probably his life was sleeping with my wife. My stomach turned to lead. I stuffed the badge in my pocket and got out before anyone saw me. As I pulled out of the parking lot, headlights flared in my mirror. A cruiser. Mason's. He followed me for 3 miles before his lights came on. When I rolled down my window, he leaned in, grinning like the devil himself. "Evenin', Tom," he said. "Heard you've been asking questions." "Just fixin' cars," I said. He nodded, eyes narrowing. "Good. Keep fixin' cars. The folks here like their mechanics quiet." He tapped the roof twice, then walked back to his cruiser and drove off. I sat there shaking, gripping the cracked badge in my fist until I felt the metal cut my skin. That was the moment I stopped being afraid. Mason Holt thought he ran this town, but he'd forgotten one thing. Every man who builds his kingdom on lies eventually forgets who's keeping the engines running beneath him. And I just found the spark that would burn it all down. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that badge. Kenny's badge, cracked and tarnished, like it had been stomped into the dirt and left there to rot. The way Mason looked at me when he said keep quiet wasn't a warning. It was a promise. He knew. He knew I'd been digging. And if he knew that, it meant Sarah did too. I spent the next day pretending everything was normal. I went to work, changed the oil in Mrs. Franklin's truck, fixed a timing belt on a rancher's Ford, smiled when I had to. But under that calm, I was running scenarios, like blueprints of revenge mapped out in my head. There are 2 kinds of men in small towns like Ridge Hollow: those who worship power, and those who fix the mess it leaves behind. Mason thought I was the second kind. He was wrong. At noon, I went to the diner. Same one Mason always used. I watched him through the window, sitting in his booth, laughing with Clyde Barrett, the developer. They looked untouchable. They'd been untouchable for years. Then I saw something that stopped my breath cold. Sarah walked in. She didn't even glance her own. Just slid into the booth beside Clyde. Mason moved over to make room. She leaned in, whispered something, and they all laughed. Not awkwardly, not nervously, like people who'd done this before. She wasn't a bystander. She was in it. The motel. The cash. The fake land deals. My wife wasn't just cheating on me, she was helping them. That night, I drove back to the ridge mine Lucy had marked on the map. It was fenced off, the gate locked. But locks are easy if you know how to take apart an engine. The place looked abandoned, rusted cranes, old signs, and the smell of sulfur thickened the air. I followed the tire tracks until I found the pit. There were fresh shovel marks in the dirt. Too neat to be random. I took out my flashlight and crouched down. Something glinted near the edge, a small piece of metal. I brushed away the dirt. A belt buckle, with the initials EB scratched into it. At Barker. Lucy was right. I dropped to my knees and dug until my hands bled. When I hit something hard, I froze. Wood, splintered and half buried. A coffin box, and marked. Inside the bones. And lying across them, a sheriff's badge. Mason's old badge. I stumbled back, bile in my throat. Whoever had buried Ed Barker here had left a message, a cruel joke from a man who thought he'd never be caught. And I'd just found the proof to end him. When I got back home, the house was dark. Too dark. Sarah was in the kitchen, standing by the sink, her phone glowing in her hand. She didn't hear me come in. I saw the message on her screen before she could lock it. Mason, he knows. Handle it before I do. Her hand trembled as she typed. I can fix this. Fix this, I said quietly. She dropped the phone like she'd been electrocuted. Tom, don't. I stepped closer. You and Mason, how long? She started crying, soft, desperate. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. He said we'd be safe. That you'd never find out. Safe from what? I asked. Her silence was worse than the truth. You signed the papers, didn't you? I said. The land transfers. The money laundering. You helped them cover it up. Her eyes filled, but she didn't deny it. He said it was just paperwork, Tom. He said it was for the new housing project. I didn't know what it really was. I laughed. Not out of humor, out of something broken and burning. And the motel. Was that paperwork too? She turned away, crying harder. I was scared. I slammed my hand on the counter. Of what, Sarah? Of being poor. Of living an honest life. She didn't answer. Then I saw her phone screen light up again. Another message. Mason, if he talks, I'll bury him next to Barker. I picked up the phone, showed it to her. He's not burying anyone else. I walked out before she could speak again. I could hear her sobbing, calling my name. But I didn't stop. I drove straight to Lucy's trailer. When she saw me covered in dirt and shaking, she didn't ask questions. I put the badge and the buckle on her table. Her hands trembled as she touched them. You found him? I found more than him, I said. I found what Mason's been hiding. Lucy stared at me, then nodded slowly. So what's next? I looked out the window at the black line of the mountains. The same road that led to the motel, the diner, the mine. Next, I said, we make them pay. For the first time in weeks. I felt calm, purposeful, but calm doesn't mean safe. Because as I was driving home, headlights appeared behind me, too bright, too close. I tried to turn off onto the service road, but the truck followed. Then I saw the reflection in my rearview mirror of the sheriff's emblem on the grill. Mason. He rammed the back of my truck once. Then again. I swerved off the road, hitting the ditch hard. By the time I looked up, his truck was gone. I stumbled out, blood on my forehead, dirt in my teeth. And on the hood of my truck, someone had spray painted one word in red, tomorrow. By morning, the paint was dry and my hands were steady. I didn't sleep, I couldn't. Every nerve in my body hummed like a live wire. That single word sprayed across my hood, and tomorrow, wasn't a warning. It was a deadline. Mason wanted control. He'd spent years twisting fear into obedience, convincing everyone that Ridge Hollow's peace depended on his kind of justice. But what he didn't understand was that when a man has nothing left to lose, fear stops working. I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. The first thing I did was go back to the mine before sunrise. I took everything: Ed Barker's belt buckle, the cracked badge, photos of the grave site, the coordinates from Lucy's map, proof of the corruption, proof of murder, proof of who had done it. Then I drove straight to the Casper Daily. The reporter there, Nora Jensen, was known for chasing stories other people buried. I walked into her office covered in dirt and old blood and dropped the evidence on her desk. She looked at me, wary. Is this what I think it is? It's murder, fraud, and a sheriff who thinks he's God, I said. And if I don't make it to sundown, I want it all printed. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. Give me everything you've got. I did. Every name, every file, every connection. Then I gave her one more thing, my brother-in-law's crack badge. Run the serial number, I told her. You'll find out why Mason's been burying more than evidence. Her eyes widened when she saw the engraving. Deputy Kenneth J. Monroe, she read. He went missing 10 years ago. Yeah, I said quietly. He was my family. When I left Casper, the sun was climbing over the hills, lighting Ridge Hollow like nothing was wrong. The streets looked calm. The people went about their day. The town was still pretending it was innocent, but by dusk, that illusion would burn. I stopped at home to grab the last thing I needed, the flash drive I'd hidden in the air vent. Every copy of the evidence was on it, photos, transfers, names. When I stepped into the house, Sarah was waiting at the table. Her eyes were red, but her posture was composed, like she'd accepted something. Tom, she said softly, please, you don't understand what you're doing. Oh, I do, I said, sliding the drive into my pocket. For the first time, I really do. Mason isn't just going to let this go, she whispered. You think you're the first person who tried to cross him. He'll kill you. I leaned against the wall, watching her carefully. You sound like someone who knows that from experience. She flinched. He said he'd hurt me if I ever told anyone. I let that hang in the air, heavy and bitter. And you thought the best way to keep me safe was to sleep with him. Tears spilled, but I didn't feel sorry anymore. I'd done my grieving already. All I felt now was a quiet, clean fury. You can leave, I said finally. Pack your things. Get out of Ridge Hollow before it starts. She shook her head, trembling. Tom, please, I'm not asking. She didn't argue again. That night, I drove to the sheriff's office. The streets were empty, wind cutting through the town like something restless. Mason's cruiser was parked out front, lights off. He was inside, sitting at his desk, drinking coffee like it was any other night. When I walked in, he looked up and smirked. Evening, Tom, you look like hell. I'm here to end this, I said. I gave everything to the press. They've got proof, names, your badge number. It's over. He laughed a low, confident laugh. You think anyone's gonna believe the word of a mechanic over the sheriff who's been here 20 years? The people love me, Tom. They need me. Not after tonight, I said. His face darkened. What did you do? Let's just say the town's gonna wake up tomorrow and find out what kind of man's been protecting them. He stood slowly, drawing his sidearm and setting it on the desk. You think you can just walk in here and ruin me? I don't need to ruin you, Mason, I said, meeting his eyes. You already did that yourself. He lunged at me. We crashed into the file cabinet, metal screaming. Papers went flying. His hands were like iron, but I fought back harder than I thought I could. Years of grease and engine work had built strength in me he didn't expect. I slammed him into the desk. His gun slid across the floor. He grabbed for it, but I was faster. I kicked it under the radiator. Then I said it, low and cold. You killed Kenny. You buried Barker. And you used my wife to cover it up. He spat blood and laughed. She came to me. You were too busy playing family man while she was dying of boredom. I hit him. Once. Hard enough to make him stumble. You took everything from me, I said. But you forgot one thing. He looked up, sneering. What's that? I'm not afraid of you anymore. He reached for his ankle backup gun, but I was already out the door, locking him inside. He fired once, the bullet punching through the doorframe, grazing my arm. I didn't stop. I poured the gasoline I'd brought along the steps, down the porch, across the cruiser's hood. Then I struck a match. The flames caught like they'd been waiting their whole lives. Through the glass, I saw Mason pounding on the door, shouting my name, his badge glinting in the firelight. The station went up fast, old wood and paper feeding the blazed out. By the time the sirens started echoing from across town, the sheriff of Ridge Hollow was already gone. I drove away slow, steady. No guilt, no triumph, just an empty quiet. When I reached the ridge, I stopped the truck and looked back. The sky over Ridge Hollow glowed orange. The illusion was burning. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Nora Jensen. It's done. The story's live. I opened it. The headline filled the screen: Corruption and Murder in Ridge Hollow, Sheriff Mason Holt exposed. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift. The truth was out. The lies were ash. 3 days later, I left town. No note. No goodbyes. Just the road and the wind and the faint smell of smoke behind me. Sarah didn't call. She didn't need to. Some things can't be fixed, but sometimes they can be ended. As I drove through the canyon, I passed the Red Elk Motel one last time. The vacancy sign flickered weakly, buzzing like a dying heartbeat. And for a moment, I almost felt peace, because Ridge Hollow wasn't quiet anymore. It was free.